We are raw and real Western women who have endured the fires of life, and though we carry the brands of our trials,
we are learning how to satisfy our thirst with the well of water that comes from the only one that can truly satisfy, Jesus.
Journey with us as we explore an unlimited range of topics. We will discuss our personal experiences,
the good, the bad, and the ugly, along our beautiful journeys to the well, and so much more.
Water up! All right, so this evening we're going to touch on a topic that is kind of a raw and real topic and could even get a little bit controversial depending upon your perspective. But at the same time, we're going to focus on it from a biblical perspective. And we're going to talk a little bit about raising our children up in the current world that we live in today. Some of the things that they run into and see and question, some of the things that they come home with that they either have questions about or have experienced, and how it all reverts back to a single Bible verse. And that verse is in Proverbs 22, it's verse 6, my version, which is it's the New International Version, and it reads pretty simplistically, start children off on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. And so we're just going to kind of focus on how everything that we teach our kids and the things that they come home with reverts back to this verse and the way that we should instruct them.
I guess one of the things that popped up to me whenever we initially come up with this topic was how to instruct your kids to act accordingly when somebody's bullying them or taking up for a friend, like the different responses there. My kids are homeschooled, so I don't run into a lot of that, but I run into them together fighting or, fighting with their friends when they do come over. Like, what is right and what is wrong? Is it just play? When is the time to discipline because it's too much? And what does it say about it in the Bible? So I think I run into the problem of, like, my boys are very rambunctious. Mm-hmm. And, of course, some of y'all may know, my husband posted a video of my two kids fist fighting on Facebook. I was gone. I was not there. But it's like, to me, it hurt my heart because Jesus said, we're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to love one another and stuff like that. I do understand that they are boys and they play. But where is that fine line? Like, if they do that there, will they think it's okay in another setting? I've always been taught my whole life, you don't start it. But if somebody comes up to you, you better finish it. If not, you're going to get spanking when you get home, kind of thing. So I was brought up that way. It's not very, Christian or loving way, I guess. But I was raised with all boys. You had to protect yourself, So it's I guess my thing is what are y'all's views on that? If, for instance, one of your kids was getting bullied, or if, just say, a fight broke out, how do you think Jesus would feel about your kid's reaction to it if they were to take an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, like it says?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had that instance. We're homeschooled now, so like you said, we don't really get into it that much unless my kids are at your house and after.
What is that supposed to mean?
Brotherly love is what I would call it. Is now how they
Sorry.
are. But the instance that happened is that my son saw one of his friends get hit by this other boy who had a bad reputation throughout the school of just quote unquote being a bad kid. And so my son did stand up for his friend, and then they got in trouble. But actually, God's grace was shown through that. Retaliation probably is not the best, but we did not discipline our son for stepping in and protecting his friend who could not stand up for himself at the time. But we did make the boys apologize to each other, shake each other's hands, give each other a hug, and then actually they ended up being best friends. The whole circle of boys ended up being best friends. It was almost like this kid did not know how to interact with other kids, and so he was just showing it out of anger, where my son was able to step in and show it out of love. he was concerned that this boy was getting too far out of hand. So anyways, we didn't discipline him. He did get in trouble at school, but because he did step in and help his friend out, and he was actually able to eliminate an issue that was going to continue to progress. And he didn't do it because he was angry at the boy. He did it in protection for his friend. In that instance, I just kind of feel like someone needed to discipline the child, and when someone was able to step in and do it out of love and concern, it opened his eyes up and made him realize, hey, even though I can be mean around people, people can still love me. And then he was in turn able to show love to them. And so I'm just thankful that God's glory shined through that.
So basically, a positioned heart, like an upright positioned heart in it. Like Jim at the time had that. He was going in and helping for a friend, standing in for a friend who was weaker. So his heart was positioned to help, whereas the other kids was just strictly out of meanness. So I guess that draws the fine line there of, you only retaliate back if your heart is in the right position. I'm not saying that is correct, but just how it perceives to me, don't act on it, but if it comes to you and you've done all you can to stay out of it, and that's your last resort, then by all means, you know. Yeah.
Well, and in all things, teach them not to act out of anger. Teach them to stand up for their neighbor who may be weaker. Teach them to read a situation before they just jump in all things, not necessarily just in bullying or in a school fight or, but in all things, don't react in anger, and, think through the situation so that you can react with a heart that's aligned with God and with the Bible.
So I guess one thing I want to ask, because I don't have girls, and y'all all three have girls. So how do y'all handle that? Between that? The same,
Girls are worse than boys. They are mean.
And I think
Listen,
yes.
my son is the sweetheart who just sits there, and if somebody comes at him fast, this baby rolls up like a little roly-poly, and I'm like, what are you doing?
This is true.
This is true. And my girls are a lot tougher, and I feel like they're made to be independent. They're made to be strong, and okay. All right, so for in my house, the girls are a lot tougher. They more bully my son than the other way around. He's the typical boy who pesters them, but they're more in that retaliation. I'm fixing to run through this house and tackle you. And so I don't necessarily see in our house discipline being different, the boys versus the girls. But, I mean, if you ask the girls, Jim's,
the golden child.
The golden child is... doesn't get onto as much, but there was a lot of work put in place for him early on.
Yeah. What about JC?
Well, JC is a very strong-willed child, but she's also extremely kind-hearted. She is the mother of every group she's in. If there's a baby, she's going to go take care of it. She's got the very motherly instincts going for her. So, for instance, one birthday party that she had, there was this little boy who was pestering all the other kids there. I look up, and JC is, legit has him in a headlock and is socking him. And I was like, oh, no. Anyways, it ended up being a big misunderstanding, but she was defending her friends. And so, I didn't get onto her too much. I was like, hey, maybe there was a better way to, bring that to the adults instead of just going to punch the kid, But she was little at that point, so she just went with her instincts. And so another thing with her is we've also taught her to be, she's kind of a tomboy already. So, we've taught her to play with the boys. You can be rough and tumble, and you're fine, get up and blow it off.
Cowboy kids are a different breed.
They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
And so, her, she's not necessarily a rough-natured person, but if she's pushed to the point,
Are you finding that you need more fuel throughout the week? Check out these other Jesus-driven podcasts. The Get Right Christian podcast, hosted by Jess Bishop, Jay Barnes, and Justin Brent. And Unshakable with Charlana Kelly, brought to you by Speak Truth Media. Charlana has been a wonderful influencer of ours, and we highly recommend listening to her program.
But anyways, in that situation, you know, it was kind of like you probably could have brought it to the adults and it could have been resolved without throwing fists or whatever. But it ended up being a good lesson for all the kids involved, really. And another thing that I have made sure to teach her is that I know that I struggled whenever I was her age and growing up, like through teenage years and through hormones and all that stuff. I just thought I had to go with whatever emotion blew my way that day. Like I didn't think that I could, you know, like as a kid, you don't really see the fact that just because you feel crappy or you're PMSing or something, like I don't have to be victim to that. I can choose to have a good day regardless, but I have to make that choice. I can't let the emotion take over. But like as a kid, you know, I just kind of did what most kids do and let the emotions just ruin my day or whatever, you know, whatever's coming at you that day. But I've tried to teach her that, hey, we don't have to, you know, if you're angry at something, think about why you're angry. Is it just a selfish reason? Is it something that's you should be angry about? Like, is it a righteous anger, or is this something that you're just being selfish about? Because a lot of the times, like she goat ties, and so like during practices, she'll get mad if she's messing up a lot. Like she'll get mad at herself. I'm like, why are you getting mad? It's just a practice. This is what we're working on. But she'll get frustrated. You know, I mean, anybody who does whenever they're not doing good at, you know, performing their best. Like JC's one of her she's her biggest critic. And I was the same way as a kid, but I've tried to teach them, like, hey, it's okay. Think about it. What are you messing up on? What's frustrating you? Like, how can you make this better? Just do the best that you can, and you've got to be okay when it's not okay. Like, you've got to step back up and be like, okay, how do we turn this around? So I've tried to turn it into a thinking situation and not
A reaction.
just straight up reaction.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, I did that a lot, and I would just get mad and be in my emotions, you know.
But were we really taught any different?
No. Really, no.
Like a lot of people don't do that with kids. And I feel like JC's 9, about to be 10, and I mean I've started that kind of at a younger age, but I feel like her maturity level is above a lot of her own age group. I mean, I get compliments on her all the time just because but I mean, on the ranch, you have to be more grown up. You've got to listen. You've got to. It's a safety issue.
It is.
And because if you say it 3 times and they still don't listen, they make it get their head kicked off over there.
Or plowed over.
Or hurt.
Yeah, kind of like you were saying on how to teach them to control their emotions. That to me is the hardest for the girls, because my son doesn't have the emotions that the girls carry. Like he's either in a good mood or, he might be upset, but guys just roll it off really quick. But my girls will hold on to it. And one time I had one of them, they were like, Mom, I'm just mad and I don't know why. I was like, I get you. Yeah, I understand. But just her being able to express that, you could just immediately see it lifted up off of her shoulders. And so being able to communicate and have them open, like I think that's wonderful to
being able
teach
to talk
her
about
to
it.
stop and why. Is there a reason that day? No, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I get it. We all have those days, but let's not ruin everybody else's around you.
Right. Learn how to express it properly. And that's really powerful, what you were talking about, like teaching her now as a child how to retrain your mind, like Romans 12:2 is my favorite Bible verse. Yes. But, we don't teach our children that. We don't teach, all too often, how to retrain our mind and focus on the thought process, focus on the positivity.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the emotion, or even in the heat of the moment, how to listen to the Holy Spirit as a child, because he speaks to them too, just like he speaks to us in what people call their gut feelings, or the butterflies that they get in their tummy, or, the feelings that they get in their heart. And, we just sum it up like, oh, yeah, follow your gut. No, it's the Holy Spirit. But we don't teach that, and I'm guilty of that. Like, that's something that I need to work on. And like with Macy, she, like you said about JC, is she's hard-headed. she is, but she also has a kind heart, and she struggles with her emotions on certain things, like you were saying about your girls. Like, she'll get in it and have a hard time letting go of it. She can hold a grudge like nobody's business. Like, she can hold one better than me.
Yes.
And so those are things that we've had to kind of focus on and hone in on. And you can't let these things take your joy. You can't let these things ruin your day. And she, after she got baptized, which she says, I got bathymatized, it became so much more important to her, like for her little self at school, to be kinder to people, or to try and set an example to help other people. And she gets really upset if she is at school and she tries to do good or tries to help somebody and they don't reciprocate. She gets very upset about it. She doesn't understand why, or why another little kid would be mean or say something mean when she's over here trying to be kind. And it's really hard to explain to a 6-year-old, well, you can't control somebody else's actions and emotions. You can only control your own.
Yep.
So you have to stay Christ-like, and you have to stay kind, and you have to set a good example regardless of what they're doing over here.
Right.
Like, all you can do is set an example and hope that they learn from it, that you plant seeds that are going to be watered. And so that's something that we've had to talk about a good bit here lately, and that she's run into at school. Like, she had some of her friends, she said, were making fun of her hair. And we all know she loves to wear her hair down and wild. It's long and it's beautiful, and you brush it out in the morning and it looks so pretty, but by the end of the day it's just kind of a wild mess, but it's beautiful. And all the other girls in school, or a lot of them, they got their hair done up in these fancy hairdos with bows and ribbons and all this, and that's not her. It's never been her. And so when she came home and she said that, they were making fun of her about her hair, my first instinct was like, screw them, screw what they think, you know what I mean? But then I'm like, okay, how can I turn this into like a biblical example? How can I guide her through the Bible in how to react? And so I told her, I said, if that's what you like, I said, and it always has been, I said, you need to find your joy and your self-confidence in yourself through Jesus. So, like, if that's what you're happy and that's how you're happy wearing your hair, I said, then be you. Be you. Know that you're beautiful. Know that Jesus thinks you're beautiful. I think you're beautiful. And all those other kids are just being mean because they wish they had hair like yours.
Right.
And it's just a matter, like, I find myself now trying so hard to find biblical examples to give her when she comes home with things like that.
Like, I can definitely see how, like, JC has grown as I've grown. Like, it's like, mamas, let your baby see you go to church. Let your baby see you step out of your comfort zone. Let your baby see you step up to pray. Because after I started stepping out of my comfort zone, so did JC. She prayed in front of church on Sunday, and she asked to do it. I'm not pushing her towards that. I'm letting her go as God leads her with that kind of thing. But in situations like that, you've got to teach them to be their own person, that they can be different, that they can be their own unique individual, and it's okay not to fit in with the bows and the hair.
You don't have
like
to follow
everybody.
the pack.
Right. Yep.
But they watch everything we do, whether you got boys or girls or whatever.
Yes.
But, like, they watch everything you do. You are a mirror of Christ, and if you're not acting Christ-like, guess what? They ain't gonna act Christ-like either.
Listen, I've done seen so many things of myself pop up in that kid. I'm like, oh my God,
Yes.
I quit.
Yes, I can relate to that. Me and Joel both
They
can
will
relate to
bring
that.
it to life
Yes.
for sure.
No joke. So, in regards to discipline, The piece of advice that my dad gave me that stands out the most when we had Macy was, and he said it when she was born, and he said it again about 2 years ago when he came to visit, and he said, you have to make sure when you're disciplining her that you're disciplining out of love and not anger. And he wasn't standing there telling me I was doing it wrong and I needed to change how I was parenting or anything like that. He just simply planted a seed. And God has been watering it, and I understand the difference now. So I know what it feels like to discipline out of anger. I would raise my voice and I would holler, I would lose my temper. And it wasn't even worth it. Like the devil had a foothold there within my temper in my relationship with her. And it's something that within the last 2 years we've had a drastic turnaround. So like you said, you can see as you grow, JC grows. Well, that's been, as I've been able to grow, especially in that specific area, how I discipline her and correct her, I've seen so much more growth in her because of the example that I'm able to set disciplining out of love. It doesn't mean that I don't spank her, and it doesn't mean that I might not raise my voice to get her attention, but it does mean that she understands the difference, that I'm doing it because I love her, because I want good for her, because I want her to be safe,
Right.
not because I'm mad at her. Like we had an instance the other day, for example, like we all know, sorry, when you saddle your horse, you do your front cinch first, then you do your back cinch. When you unsaddle your horse, you undo your back cinch first, then your front cinch. So she's been riding almost every day, and I still have to help her get everything tight, but she does it all up herself. And 3 days in a row, she'd go to unsaddle her horse, and she would do the front cinch first and then the back cinch. And she'd say, gosh, I forgot. And I'm like, if you can think about it and know you forgot, you're just making a thing out of it. You're because she'll do that sometimes, try and see what she can get away with for no good reason.
Right.
But it's a safety hazard because, her horse, is he going to do anything? No. But as soon as she's on something else and it flinches wrong and the saddle rolls under its belly and then she gets kicked in the head, there's a million things that can go wrong there. And so I told her, I said, listen, that's the third day you've said that to me, and she goes, well, my horse isn't going to do nothing. I said, no, why? Why'd you have to say that? And I took the end of her bridle rein and I smacked her butt with it. And I told her, I said, this isn't the time to run your mouth. This is the time to listen because you have to be safe. And what was it that you said, or I can't remember who said it, but it hurts me to hurt you, or it hurts me to
hurts you worse.
It
Hurts
hurts me
me
worse
worse
to have to discipline her like that than it does her butt, me spanking her with the bridle rein, because I know how much better she's capable of.
Right.
But I think that that's the difference, like to be able to stay calm and use your words controlled and show them and set an example.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There are 3 forms of discipline because discipline means to instruct. Like that is like the whole word of it. And it says discipline, which means to instruct, correct, which means to verbally reprove. And then it says and punishes, which means to flog, which translates to sensible physical discipline, not beating, but a nice swat on the hiney or, whatever. So there you go. It does say spank their rear ends.
Not out of anger.
Yeah. And that was in Hebrews 12 in the New Living Translation. It's the New Spirit-Filled Bible, the New Living Translation. Yeah. In Hebrews 12.
And Hebrews 12 is good because it talks about how God disciplines you, and the verses in there talk about, like if God is going to correct his children, like you should be okay with his correction because that means that he loves you. If he doesn't correct you, it literally says that you're an illegitimate child, like you're illegitimate. You're not.
Yep.
Not in there. So you've got to be able to accept a little bit of correction and discipline, but it's got to come from the right place. I really like how Sarah put it. Like, you can't discipline your kids out of anger. I've done that. I'm sure everybody has. Everybody's been driven to that point once or twice before, but you can take it overboard, or you can reel it back and be like, oh, I was wrong there. I'm sorry, but this is why we got there. You know, like you gotta admit you're wrong also, but also be able to take the correction yourself whenever you've done wrong.
I think that communication is key. I had one time my oldest came in and we were having a discussion. I forget what had taken place, but she was in trouble and she sat on the end of my bed and she said thank you. And I was like, "What?" She said thank you because whenever we were little you used to yell but you don't anymore. And she was like, "But at my dad's house they yell constantly. Everybody's always fine." She's like, "But you just sit there and you talk and you help me understand." She said, because, which was so key in me raising all three of the kids, she said, if you yell at me, I tone out. I cut my ears off. I don't listen anymore. She was like, but whenever you sit here and talk, I'm open hearted to you and I can receive everything that you have to say to me. And I was like, I never realized the impact of how we react to them in a situation, because we do immediately. We're like, what are you doing? Get out of that. Stop. But whenever you're like, hey, whoa, let's sit down and talk, her being big enough to come and say thank you is life changing.
There was something about that, and we heard about it. It was talking about how if somebody can't talk to you sensibly, then you tell them to come back because you're holding a higher regard for them. And so, like, that's like a God thing for her to be able to come to you and be like, I can receive when you're doing this. Like, she's holding you to a higher standard for out of respect for herself and for you. You know, like, so that's a wonderful thing that you've instilled in her and that she's taken, you know, and she'll instill that into her children.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, think about it. Ain't nobody want to listen to nobody if they're screaming at you in your face.
No.
Well, because then you know that they're talking out of their mind.
Yeah.
And in James 1:19, so 1:19 through 20. 20 is the one that I don't think anybody really continues to read. So I'll read 19 and 20. It says, so then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. That one I hear all the time. Be slow. Think about what you're doing. But 20 says, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And that's exactly what she was telling me without those exact words.
Yeah,
That was so powerful to me.
that's awesome.
That
Like,
is
it made
awesome.
my eyes tear up.
That is very cute. But it's also like I like what you said about, you know, letting herself keep that high standard. Like with the whole defense thing. Like, you have the authority to be Christian people. We're not some lowly people that everybody can trample over. Just because it says turn the other cheek doesn't mean that you lose your authority in Jesus Christ.
That's
You
good.
keep your authority. You just have a seasoned grace or a humble confidence. I don't know how else to
No, that's good.
describe it, but
Yeah.
but holding that high standard, saying I'm worth the time it takes to calm myself down, talk about it, think about it, instead of just getting angry and making a choice. Just
Talking-
having a reaction.
Not being talked at, but being talked to. Like, that's a good thing to have instilled, because
Right.
now when other people come to her, she's going to hold them to that higher standard too. If you want to talk to me, but don't talk at me.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a big deal.
Absolutely. And another thing too that I thought of while you were talking about that, you know, when we do react out of anger, because it does happen, none of us are perfect, and like, I've done it and I'll still do it even though it's something that I'm working on.
Right.
But now I make an effort to apologize. And yes, I apologize to my child.
I do too.
It's okay.
Yes.
And I think it's important because just like you instilled that in her and she received it, I want to instill in Macy that when somebody does something wrong, that you should apologize, even if it's somebody who is socially above you, you know, that they should still apologize to you, so that hopefully, you know, if she runs into that as a parent or even in her school years, that she will then apologize for her own actions. That just because you're above somebody doesn't mean that you can't apologize to them.
Well, that, and you're showing them that an act of humbling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 90% of being a Christian is laying yourself down and humbling yourself and your fleshly desires. And if we just react out of anger and then we don't go apologize it, like, that's just a fleshly reaction. That's not a Christ-like reaction. Because, like, I mean, the whole time that Jesus went to court or Jesus was being beaten, and he didn't say a word.
Well, God shows us so much grace and mercy. I mean, look at how many times he pulled Israel out. Like, it's this constant, okay, we're going to have to discipline again. And then they call out, but every time he receives them back in.
Yep.
Yep.
And restores them to even better than they were. So correction should not be something that we fear.
Right.
It's a what did that little thing say about the Greek word for discipline was to instruct. And I really like that because, I mean, we're teaching our kids, even at little bitty ages, how to be full-grown adults.
Yes.
So you want to start that at a young age. You don't want to start, like, whenever you have a 2-year-old or something and people think it's really funny when they're, like, hitting at your face. Oh, it's cute right now. It's really not. Whenever they're 5 and they're still doing it. You know what I mean? Like, so setting those standards at a young age is okay, I feel like. And I feel like raising your kids that way is beneficial to them. Yes, let them be kids, let them play, let them roughhouse, but also have those moments. I mean, it's a situation by situation kind of a experience, but I mean, take the examples that you can set and start while they're little.
Yeah, for sure. And this just came to me too. It's a little bit off topic from what you were talking about, but we could go back to like the physical stuff or the fighting, and turning the other cheek. So turning the other cheek is an act of faith. It's an act of trusting that when you turn the other cheek, that God's going to handle it and is going to take care of it on your behalf. And it's so hard for the fleshly part of us to be okay with that because we want to control the situation that we're in. But if we can set that example for our children, it's going to help grow and build their faith as we grow and build ours.
Right.
Well, and I think, too, that gives you the opportunity to teach them to pray for you or for them. So, like, if the boys are fighting and wrestling or whatever, then pull away, love each other. But then at night, whenever you're saying your bedtime prayers, pray for your brother, pray for your sister, pray for that loved one that you just had a beef about earlier in the day, just to show that love.
Yeah.
I think the portion of it that bothered me so bad, because it's not like an unusual thing for them to do that. It's like my oldest will provoke the young one because he just wants to love and like go on, where Kendon's total different ball game. Like he thrives on that stuff because Case is little and he knows he can win, and it's like one of those things. Don't push him to the point to where he's mad and retaliates out of anger, because now you've done embarrassed him and you've hurt his feelings. So like the position of Kendon's heart there is not because I just want to play. I want to do it because there's people watching, so like it's a whole different driven. Or if the camera was on him, well, he can't beat me because there's going to be so many people, so the position of the heart is wrong. And so like whereas Case, he's already mad and upset, and he's getting thumped on. So he's like, ding, ding, ding. The first thing he's going to bite the crap out of you, and then he's going to go to swinging at your face. Like, you've already pushed him. So now you've made him sin on top of what you've done. Even though they're just kids and kids will be kids, but you're setting that up for adulthood.
To push to the point of anger.
Yeah.
And here's the verse that goes with that. It's Ephesians 6:4, and it starts out with fathers, but I mean even an older brother. Do not exasperate or anger your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yep.
But see, that's a thing too, because my husband likes to wrestle. So he, does that, and he'll go in there and get them all riled up, get them to the point mad, like bite their toe or something like that. So then it's like a full on war. So like, that's where it derives from. Well, Dad come in here and did this, and now I'm mad. Well, then like belts are pulled down, and I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. Y'all need to calm down right now. And like, we're all guilty, of slinging and, playing and whatnot. But it's like, how do you teach them or what does God say about that, like out in public or out in the real world, or, when they get by themselves. Well, when I was a kid, if somebody got the best of me, I just punch them in the nose. I'm not necessarily like my kids, but just kids in general,
Yeah.
out of pride. Because when little boys get bigger, it's going to be, who's, you know,
Yep.
Who can take
yeah,
one hit and
yeah,
knock
who
'em
can
out.
watch this? I'm gonna hurt him because don't even go there with me with all the puffed up stuff. But it's just like I don't know. It like hurt my heart because it's like Kendon knows better. Like don't do that. Just because this don't you don't
Yep.
have to feed into it. So it's like trying to teach your children not to feed into stuff like that because you're influenced by something else.
And don't provoke it because there's going to be a time that they, poke the bear.
Yeah.
Poke someone
Right.
who's bigger than them, badder than them, and
Or then they don't know when to stop. You've
Yeah.
done told them to stop, and then they don't,
Yep.
or they come back. Well, guess what? Now I'm fixing to have to spank you, and then you're gonna get all feelings, which whatever.
Yep.
But that's another thing too. Is I have too. Y'all talked about apologizing to your children. Off of that, I have started like if I've had to. What did it say in the Bible? Flog them. That's an awesome one. Flog them.
flog.
And doing that, like after I've gotten on to them, I will sit them down and be like, listen, do you understand why you got in trouble? And then
Yeah.
I'll have them tell me why they got in trouble. You told me 3 times to stop and I did it. So now they have a perception, they understand why I had to do what I
Yep.
did. And like that has taken my guilt away of spanking them because it used to hurt my feelings. But it's like, I gave you the chance. God gives us chance after chance after chance. And then after that, it's like, what else did you expect me to do?
Yeah.
So I ask that, and they tell me what they did wrong, and I'm like, do you understand why I did what I did? Do you understand why I spanked you, or whatever? And they'll be like, yes, I do. Do you understand that I'm not angry at you, but this was to instruct you or teach you, that that's not okay? And they're like, yes, I do. And if they don't, then I will explain to them why.
Yes.
And it may not be biblically based, or whatever, but I'll explain to them why I reacted the way I did.
Yep.
You're being disrespectful.
Yeah.
You lied. Do you know what that does? That sets you up. You've already opened a door for the next lie to be available to cover up this one, whatever it may be. They have to understand why they're in trouble. You don't just go up to them, get on to them, and then not explain, well, why did she spank me? What was I doing wrong when something's been okay in the past, for them to do, and then all of a sudden you're coming up spanking them. They don't understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they are humans. Explain to them why you're getting on to them, because some of them just may not know.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
they're
I've
learning.
I've had an instance where Kendon's like, I don't understand why you got on to me. I'm like, listen here. But it's like, how did you not know? You knew exactly what you were doing, but in reality, he really
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's kind of like what it, But I've also tried, too, not to get, like y'all said, like, irate or whatever, or react on anger.
Right.
But the older they get, that is really hard.
Yeah.
Hard. That whole shaking their head when you turn around, and I'm like, I was doing really good.
Here it
Here comes
comes.
the charger. No, I'm just kidding.